Hello, I'll be presenting James Henry, a prolific realist novelist. James Henry was a prolific novelist and critic. During his lifetime, he wrote many novels. Today, he's remembered as the author of the novel *The Portrait of a Lady*, and many more. Henry James was known for being a great psychologist, novelist, and he was one of the greatest to do so while being very influential. He produced 72 volumes of novels and tales through the end of Civil War and the beginning of World War One. He was born April 15, 1843 in New York and died on February 28, 1916. His notable works include *The Ambassador*, *The American*, and *The Aspirin Papers*, and of course, *The Portrait Lady*, which was said before. Henry James was wealthier than many kids his age, so he traveled to many sites and places as a child. Since he traveled a lot more, he learned other languages, so he was a lot more intelligent than other people his age. Henry was a very quiet child who was in love with novels, and he just watched his surroundings. He attended Harvard when he was only 19 years, and by his mid-20s, he was noticed as one of the most talented story writers of his time. Sorry, the recording lasted longer. Alright. Here's the influence of James' European experience. Understanding James' European experience is vital in order to understand his literacy. According to CliffNotes.com, James sensed the freedom of Americans to deal freely with forms of civilization not our own and assimilate. He traveled to Europe plenty of times and gained a wide range of connections with leading literary figures at the time. Being in Europe gave James his dominant theme, the illumination of the present by the sense of the past, the American present illuminated by the sense of the European past. And he's just saying that the American history is relating to the European past, and he can sense it. And the picture on the left is his former house of Henry James. Here is Henry James' historic importance. The picture on his left is The Watch and Ward. This is one of his first novels he produced. And basically, the plot of this is a wealthy and leisured Roger Williams adopts a 12-year-old girl named Nora after her father kills himself in a hotel room next to Lawrence's. Roger had refused financial assistance to the man and feels remorse. So Nora is not a pretty child, but she soon starts to develop, and as does Roger's idea of eventually marrying her. But unfortunately for Roger, Nora matures and she's attracted to two other men named George Fenton, a minister, and Hubert Lawrence, Roger's cousin. After various adventures, she ends up going to New York with Fenton, but Roger comes to her rescue, and fortunately, Roger and Nora marry in a very happy ending, which is kind of ironic. James Henry was one of the longest career while being very influential. He wrote 20 books, 20 novels, 112 tales, 12 plays, and many critic reviews. James' novels and stories were so famous, probably they were translated in many other languages, making him one of the best craftsmen to write ever. Now we are on Henry's impact on literature. Henry James was an important figure to the literary realism after the Civil War. He introduced writing from his character's point of view, also introducing another perception of the story, which is fairly new to many people. Henry expanded and introduced new styles for narrative fiction with his innovative and creative point of view and unique use of characters and narrators in his novels. All of his different and unique attributions to literary realism influenced the future writers after him. And on our screen to the left, we have a quote by Henry James: "It's time to start living the future you imagine." And it's just a very inspirational quote I thought I'd put in there. And now we have my last slide, another Henry impact on literature. Well, first I wanted to make sure that we know what a realistic literature means, and it's just characters had to be ordinary, average, and contemporary people. Plots had to be just made up of incidents of everyday life as just natural life, and the nature of ordinary experience rather than contriving the tensions, the climax of wondering, and then the intermediate nature of an ordinary experience, rather than just living on the tensions and the climax of just traditional plots in a regular storyline. And the language had to be equally natural, or at least give the impression of doing so. And we have Henry. Henry made a psychological realism popular. James emphasized on the psychological part a lot in his stories because how he would use to carry this point of view. James provided in the era with the changed style for novel form. Every novel before him, no matter what type of novel it was, novel manners, the novel politicals, the comic novel, after James' popular piece, the portrait novels were never so in a continuous form. And here on my works cited page.